I've been doing some thinking lately, and I realized that when I was a kid, most of the TV shows that I preferred had women starring in them. So I actually like Xena Warrior Princess far more than I liked The Adventures of Hercules. I used to enjoy Sailor Moon. It's actually the first anime that I've ever seen, and I think most Romanians can also agree with me. I used to like Cleopatra 2525. If you don't know what that is, you'd have to Google it. It's amazing, trust me. Buffy, Vampire Slayer, and I used to like comic books that had women in them. Like I used to like Batgirl, for example. And today, whenever I hear that a movie is going to be female centric oriented, like for example, a game like The Last of Us or female Ghostbusters or Charlie's Angels, I usually go like, ugh. But for some reason, I don't go, if it's a Japanese anime that has women in it. So the problem must be specifically with the current school of thought that you see in the West that didn't exist in the past and doesn't exist outside the West. So it's just this current culture that modern day Hollywood likes to have, or certain video gaming companies like NetherRealm Studios or Ubisoft or EA Games. And I think I managed to compile on why this doesn't work. Like, why are these characters so unappealing to the public to the point where the comic books don't sell, the video games don't sell, the movies don't sell? Like, what are they doing wrong that doesn't appeal to the market? And I think like that's the first thing, like they're trying to force the market. If you actually listen to some of these people talk in TEDx or in various magazines, they outright say that they are to educate the public. Like they're not a business, they're not trying to put something in a display and the people that like it buy it. No, like in their mind, it's the other way around, like you have to buy it. And I guess like one of the ways they're trying to do this is to create a network of people and influencers and bloggers and journalists that all think the same, so that you will be surrounded by the same type of product everywhere you look, and you have no more choice in the matter. You just have to buy it because that's the only thing available, right? So this is kind of difficult to explain or to put in words, but anyone that watches, for example, a website like Rotten Tomatoes, or sees how YouTube decides to manipulate its search algorithm in order to promote Brie Larson's movie, that's what I'm talking about, right? Like people from different areas of influence seeming to collaborate together just to push the correct type of films while suppressing the wrong type of films. For example, Joker got heavily suppressed even though it was a commercial success. And later on, they even gave it to Oscars. So, you know, it's not necessarily like a conspiracy, but I suppose imagine like a Christian nation where the people in power are Christians and they will suppress things that they find sinful while promote things that they found to promote Christianity in their view, right? It's literally the same. It's an ideology. It's not that these people necessarily need to talk to each other. It's just the ideology of how to correctly make a movie that exists in the mind of a lot of journalists, and the people who create the movies have to please the journalists in order to get the movie to pass. And it's the same for video games, really. Now, with that said, like, what do I think is the wrong way to depict a female character and the exact way that they're doing it right now? Well, the way they're doing it is very different than when they make, for example, a male character. With a female character, they separate the character into two aspects. The looks, the appearance, and the personality. Now, the looks, they are part of this feminist way of thinking that if you have a sexy woman on a cover, you're promoting rape culture. Because for some reason, and I'm not even making it up, like if you listen to feminists, they used to say this, like right now they're not making this argument anymore, but it used to be like men watching skimpily clad women on a comic book makes them think that it's okay to touch women in the street. And this is why when you go to various gaming conventions, you will see like plenty of signs saying cosplay is not consent. That's what they're talking about, okay? It's this ideology that if you somehow show teenage boys the female form, then they will engage into rape culture. And another thing they say is like these women look unrealistic. And it makes other girls who don't look like the superhero model on a comic book feel insecure with themselves, feel insecure with their bodies. So you're actually hurting people, like real people, when you draw a comic book with a sexy woman. Notice that none of this nonsense exists in manga or in Japan. This is just Western thinking, okay? And it's not being supported by studies or anything like that. It's just like what they feel is normal. And it's very interesting because remember the idea of realistic depiction of women, right? This is what they go with. And finally, it's also with gender ideology, right? Like they want to go, it's like gender is a spectrum and they want to subvert expectations. So they make women look as androgynous as possible. Small chests, strong jaws, broad shoulders, covered all the way up. Like this seems to be the Western way of depicting female characters nowadays. And you get to see it in a lot of video games. In movies, not so much. Not in TV shows, but in video games, it's almost predominant. Okay, so that's like the aspect. Like if you want to have a character, you need to do this. Otherwise, the people on Reset Era are going to complain. Otherwise, the people on Rotten Tomatoes are going to complain. Right? The people on Metacritic, they're not going to like it. They're going to say that you're a sexist if you depict a woman with big tits. Okay, now let's look at the personality. So the personality of these women have to be flawless. The reason they have to be flawless because people who are into social justice, they reject individuality. They reject the idea that people should be able to make their own decisions and whatnot. No. They view that in art is the responsibility of the artist to create cultural symbols, to create basically the doodled version of Jesus Christ. Like, what was Jesus Christ? Jesus Christ was a religious figure that is perfect in every way in the minds of the Christians. And no one can actually be like Jesus Christ, but you can try to emulate into becoming like him. You should emulate his kindness. You should emulate his behavior. You know, you should emulate his empathy. That's what it is. So when they create something like Captain Marvel, they expect that other women are going to emulate her in order to become better people. Which is why Captain Marvel needs to be perfect in every single way. She can't have any flaws whatsoever when it comes to her character. So she needs to be good at science. She needs to be brave. She needs to be courageous. She needs to be charismatic. She needs to be a good leader. Like all of these things. And when you do that, you create something that people can't relate with. It's very difficult, like when I'm reading a comic book, to relate to a perfect character that doesn't go through any sort of difficulties or hurdles. Because I always know, and this is like when I watch a TV show nowadays, like I always know if a character is a lesbian, I'm pretty sure like they're going to make it. You know, if there's a slasher film and they're killing off the cast, I'm like, no, the lesbian character is going to make it because they can't have her killed because then activists complain on Twitter. And they had complained like in the 100, they actually sent death threats to the director because he killed a lesbian in the show. So, you know, it's also this outside pressure from activists in order to conform. Like, you have to do art just one particular way. And it's also about, in their view, and if you listen to TED Talks and whatnot, they say they want to destroy the gender stereotypes, right? Like, they don't want to be like, men need to behave this way, women need to behave this way. That's putting people in a box and that's evil. So what they do is they just reverse the gender stereotype. And if you look at Star Trek Picard, if you look at Star Trek Discovery, like those are perfect examples of what they are doing. They're not destroying the stereotype, they're just reversing the boxes. So now women are going to suffer from toxic masculinity. They're very aggressive, very easy to upset, very good in a fight, very good in combat, while the men are more like supporting characters. They're very afraid of everything. They're easily spooked. They're not as clever. They're not as intelligent. And even Angry Joe has noticed this. And even Angry Joe has started talking about it. And he got attacked. Like, he got attacked by the people because he didn't like The Last of Us. And he didn't understand why it's happening. But that's it. Like, these people are not creating entertainment anymore. They're not creating art. It's just that they're trying to create propaganda. It's like they're trying to create cultural symbols that other people should emulate. Again, it's like the Jesusification of comic books and movies. And this is why they get upset and they take it so personal when you insult the new Brie Larson movie or when you insult the new Star Wars movie. Because for them, this is how they think people should behave. Like, you should behave like they in that fictional world. And when you're pissing on it, it's like you're pissing on the Gospel of Luke or something. You know, like for them, it's almost religious in nature. These works of art, they're not for entertainment. They're a guide on how people should behave. And when you say no, this is wrong, and you're ripping it apart, they view that as an attack on themselves. Really, like they view it as an attack on their way of life. Because think about it, it's like, why would a Christian or a Muslim be upset if you destroy their holy book? Because it's an attack on their way of life. Like all the ideology that surrounds them, every single way that they view life is through the prism of that book. So when you reject it, you're basically saying that every hardship that he imposed upon himself, like fasting, abstaining from, having sex outside of marriage, like all these things that they have imposed upon themselves, have been for naught, and it's insulting. It's you are ripping apart their way of thinking. So that's why you get attacked viciously on various forums if you talk bad about Star Wars, or you talk bad about Star Trek Picard, or any of these, or heaven forbid The Last of Us 2, because you are going after their way of life. Obviously when you're going to think like that, most people aren't going to buy your product. Like the Japanese don't think like that. South Koreans don't think like that. Like there's a lot of good South Korean movies coming out right now on Netflix. They're not there to educate people. They're there to entertain people. And if you don't know the difference between propaganda and art, the difference is as follows. Art, like a painting, allows the viewer to interpret whatever he wants. You can have the same movie or the same painting, and various people can have different interpretations of it. But propaganda wants to make sure that there is only the correct interpretation of it. Like the only way that the artist wanted you to interpret that picture is the only way. So again, when you see Star Wars that constantly says, like repeats it 3 or 4 or 5 times, it's like, in order for the new to survive, the old must die. That is propaganda. They basically are outright telling you, it's like, forget about the old, stop purchasing the old toys, stop caring about the old movies, they don't matter. It's like the only thing that matters is the new way we're doing things now. So anyway, let me know what you think. If you like these types of philosophical videos, I can do more of them, depending on how many people view them. If you like it, share it around. This is why they also call people misogynists, is because this is their definition of what the perfect woman should be like. And when you don't like it, they consider you a misogynist. It's quite simple. Oh, and like another thing why this is really bad, though I should make it in another video, because there's a lot of things to say here. But one of the things that pisses people off the most is that when they try to make a strong woman, they don't know how to raise people up, okay? Like, because it's very difficult to write a charismatic character, right? It's very difficult to write a very intelligent character. So what they do is, instead, it's a lot easier to make everyone else around that character stupid, so that by comparison, the character looks smart. Like, everyone around Brie Larson now has to be less brave than her, they have to be less strong than her, they have to be less smart than her in order for her to look smart. And the problem is, like, if you like one of the characters that's around Brie Larson, then you're going to lose something. Like, it's something that's taken away from you, from your enjoyment, because you used to like that character that's now acting like an idiot for no other reason than the fact that he's in the presence of Brie Larson. The perfect example with this would be in Game of Thrones, like Sansa Stark, for example, walks in the courtyard, and at one point she sees a blacksmith, and she tells the blacksmith, it's like, you need to pad those breastplates because winter is coming and it's going to be cold, so make sure you pad them with animal first. And the blacksmith goes like, oh yes, oh my lady, oh that's so smart. And you have to realize, it's like, how would a noble woman know about that to begin with? Like, how would she know anything about blacksmithing either than like the most basic fundamentals, let's say? And secondly, like, why wouldn't the blacksmith himself know this? Like, the guy was doing that trade for his entire life, and like, he doesn't know that he needs to do. And finally, it's also stupid because plate needs to be constantly polished. Like, you constantly need to make sure that it doesn't rust. And if you were to put animal furs and pat it like that, how do you oil it? How do you make sure it doesn't rust, Sansa Stark? Sansa Stark, how do you know? But that's like what I'm saying, you know, like, she has an aura of stupidity around her, and everyone that gets into her presence becomes dumb and stupid. Like when Littlefinger, for example, couldn't argue his case in front of Sansa Stark. Like, even though she admitted that the aunt that was thrown to the moon door was killed by someone else, like, she admitted this, she confessed. All of a sudden, she changes her mind, and Littlefinger doesn't even bring that up. Yeah, like, he could have done a better job arguing his case than what we saw in that scenario. But again, like, everyone else around the smart character now has to act stupid. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys in the comment section.